debuting to high society in Regency London. And as she makes that step, she's also making a step towards an underbelly of demonic activity in high society that she's about to encounter. And within the shadows of that demonic underbelly is Lord Carlston.
I'm the author of the Rebel Belle series, which is a story about a girl who sort of has it all. She is valedictorian, she is SGA president, she is type A personified, and therefore she of course has to have an event that completely ruins her life, which is that she gets superpowers, and they mean that she has to defend a boy who can see the future. The only problem with that is that this particular boy happens to be her nemesis since she was in kindergarten. So, shenanigans ensue.
I'm Alwyn, and I wrote Rebel of the Sands, which is a Wild West meets Arabian Nights story about a young female sharpshooter from a dead-end desert town who decides that her best shot at getting out is to disguise herself as a boy and enter an underground shooting contest. It all goes a little bit awry, and she winds up with her fate getting tangled with another competitor in the contest, and the two of them go on the run together across the desert, fleeing an army, competing with ghouls, and going towards a rebellion.
I'm Sabaa. I wrote a book called An Ember in the Ashes. It's a young adult fantasy. It is about a girl named Elia who lives under an oppressive regime with her family, and her brother is taken by this regime and thrown into prison for treason, and she's trying to get him back. It is also about a soldier of the regime. His name is Elias, and he does not want to be a soldier anymore. So it's about his journey and how they meet and all the crazy things that happen.
My latest book is Make Puppy Midnight. It just came out last Tuesday, and it's about, there's three main characters, and it's about one boy and two girls, and one is a hero, one's a villain, and one's a liar, and the reader has to figure out who is who. I'm Karen. I wrote Deborah Rising. It's set 200 years from now on the moon. It's about a 15-year-old girl named Fate whose mother gets taken away by the government for, quote, medical reasons, end quote. So, because of this, her family's broke. She has to join the militia to save her younger siblings from starvation. And, of course, when she gets into it, there are things that she can't anticipate. Not only spaceship races and taekwondo fights with this really cute guy, but really dark things about the regime that's in power and how they got to be that way.
I like it. I want to immediately read all of them, and I've read actually most of them. Being a bookseller is awesome. So we talked a little bit today to the students at Kirkwood High School about sort of the inspiration behind these books and how these fabulous authors came to start writing. So I'm just going to open the floor for these guys to talk about what got them on the path they are today. How many people want to write a book? Or have written a book? Maureen, you can raise your hand. You guys can say yes. Okay. Now, how many people think that that process means you write a book and then it gets published and it puts on the shelf and it's just like 6 months? Right? Not quite. Now, these authors, several years. These authors have gone through incredible journeys, and I want them to sort of share with you what that journey was like.
So my journey started when I was quite young. I've been writing since I was a little girl. When I was little, I hated reading. It was really hard. I didn't start reading until I was almost 7. But once I started, I couldn't stop, and it became an escape for me and a safe place for me. And so writing, as I got older, was my way of understanding the world. I lived in this very small town. It was super racist. I am brown, and so that was kind of a problem. And so I really struggled to fit in, and writing was sort of my way to escape and to understand what was happening to me and to my family. And then as I grew older, my parents are South Asian, and so they were like, well, you're going to become a doctor. And that wasn't flying for me because I worked in a hospital and it didn't go well. And so I decided I'd do journalism because I felt like, okay, I can get a job in journalism. I won't be like living at home and like living off them. So I majored in communications, started working at a school newspaper, and then I ended up with an internship at the Washington Post. And that was really my path, and I was going to, stay at the Post and become a journalist. I started as an editor, and then I got this idea one night I was reading this story about these women in Kashmir, which is in South Asia, and how their brothers and sons and fathers and husbands are taken by the local military and thrown into prison for trumped up reasons and never seen again. And it really stuck with me because I have 2 older brothers and we're super tight, and the idea that there are places in the world where they could just be taken and thrown into a pit and never seen again really freaked me out. So I started writing this story about a girl to whom that happens. And Emily said, that books don't take 6 months. Sometimes they take 6 years, which was how long my book took. That's from the idea, formulation, to the day that my publisher said, yes, I will publish this book. So it can take a very long time. And if you are writing, just be patient with yourself. Rachel has said this before, but be kind to yourself. And also don't give up, because it can take a really long time.
Yeah, I actually came to writing like Sabaa had been writing since I was really, really young, and making up stories and things like that. I actually still have the very first book that I wrote. I wrote in kindergarten, and we did this whole project of papering it with wallpaper and things. And it's called Sky Twister. It's about a unicorn. It's thrilling. It's 5 pages long. The girl has a unicorn, a witch steals the unicorn, the girl gets the unicorn back. Which I'm like, hey, you've got a protagonist and an antagonist, you've got conflict and resolution, so it's a book. But I had never really thought that much about writing professionally, even though I did writing contests and things like that. I was actually teaching high school English, and that was one of those jobs that was almost right. I enjoyed parts of it, I didn't enjoy all of it. And then eventually, my work environment just got to a point where I was like, I will die if I stay here. Not to be dramatic, but I'm dying and I must leave. That's really what I should have put in my resignation letter. I cannot stay, for I will die. Toxicity is literally poisoning my sweet blossom soul. But anyway, and so I just up and quit my job. And then I did do that thing of I'm gonna write a book. That's what I'm gonna do, and that is gonna work out for me. I had an English degree, but it's not in creative writing. My actual degree is in my specialty was sex and gender in Victorian British novels, which is super useful. Actually, I probably could have helped Alison. Yeah, so I was if you guys need me to point out phallic symbols later, I'm your girl. Talk about how the patriarchy's trying to hold it down right here. So anyway, so I hadn't written that much, and but I had read so much YA lit when I was teaching, and I just loved it. I just thought the voice was so fun. I just thought you could go so many places with it. And so I quit my job and was very sad. I was happy I was gone, but it was kind of scary. So I just wanted to write a book that made me happy, and that book turned into Hex Hall. That was in October of 2007. I quit my job and I wrote Hex Hall from October to February, and then I had an agent within 2 weeks, and then the book sold in April. So it was a 6-month process, which is crazy, because it was the absolute pits. I had nuked my life, basically, my professional life, my personal life, okay. And I really feel that was such a scary risk to take, and I wish I could say and that's how it happens to everyone. But like I said, what was so interesting to me about this whole thing is that I really did not like teaching. It was a really hard job for me, but if I had not gone through those 3 years of having a job I didn't like very much, I would not be in front of you fine people talking tonight. So yeah, that's my sort of convoluted journey.
Mine did not take 6 months. Mine took 6 books before this book. Yeah, it's a good number. 6 complete books, and then there were some half books. Yes. Oh my God, this is amazing.
6 could be or not be the same thing. I'm okay with that.
Sorry?
No, keep going.
No. Yeah, so six complete books, because I used to write as a teenager, probably like everyone here. The very first thing I wrote was when I was 6 as well, probably, and called The Tangle Monster, and it was about a girl who had really long hair that was constantly tangled, and that it was really a pain in the ass to get it brushed, and she was always crying, and it was related to my life. It was my real struggle with my hair down to here when I was 6. No. There was a monster. There was a monster coming in the night, a little monster coming in the night to tangle her hair, so that because it's hard to be. It's still in my home somewhere, typed up by my mother, illustrated by me. I'm not an artist. But after that, when I was a teenager, I wrote some rambling fantasy, like 8 points of view that wasn't going anywhere. And then I stopped writing in university because I had papers to write and I had art history books to read.
Amen.
Buildings to look at, yeah. And then I left university and sort of just started back up again because I wasn't quite so busy anymore writing other stuff. And I wrote one book to the end for the first time, and it was terrible. And I moved on to another idea and wrote that full book, and it was also terrible. But I learned something from it, as I did with the one before that. And I just basically repeated that process, learning something from each one. I probably wrote, 6 books plus other ideas, 80,000 words each along the line. So it's probably like 1 million words in there of just practice. And I learned dialogue and, how to write a character and how to actually have a plot that makes sense and all this stuff. And then finally, I had a book that almost worked, which was the first one I tried to write as a fantasy, and it was driving me up the wall. That I couldn't make it work because I could sort of see it, and I had this other idea in the back of my mind, which was about a Wild West Arabian Nights thing, and I sort of had it pretty much plotted out. And I was like, I'm going to take a break from this other book, and I'm going to write the first chapter of this other idea I have, and then I'll go back. And it'll be a palate cleanser, and I'll go back. And I wrote the first chapter, and I immediately knew it was different than all the other books that hadn't been good enough before. And I wrote that one to the end in probably about 9 months. Then took another 6 months to edit it, and then that's how Rebel of the Sands came to be a first draft, a completed draft. Yeah.
I also wrote a very wonderful storybook when I was in prep called 50 Finds a Friend. Alliteration was my thing there. And it's about a small dog who didn't do much. I had yet to learn the idea of the arc. And the arc came when I wrote my epic fourth book in grade 5. And it just went on and on. There were many arcs. And,
Did it rhyme?
It did. Yeah. Because in Australia we have brumbies. Brumbies are horses, wild horses. So there's a lot of things you can rhyme with brumby. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Yeah. And so when I left high school, I decided I wanted to direct movies. So I went and started a film course, and I wrote a film. I wrote a film script that was actually chosen to be filmed for the course. And because I was the writer, I became the director. And there were some personality traits that came out during that process, which I thought, no one should be seeing this. And it's time to put those back into the board, never to be revealed again. But I didn't really enjoy the writing. I thought, well, this is where my heart really is, my passion really is, it's the writing. So I left the university, I dropped out, and worked for a while because I was so tired of studying. And then I went back to university and studied professional writing, which was just the best 3 years of my life. I was home, I was in the place where I should be. And I wrote many short stories because I was trained as a short story writer.